Mr. Orrin Gardner, indeed. Mm. Oh. Ah. To Miss Lizzie, with friendly greetings. I'm very anxious to meet you, and as I cannot presume upon your presence, without your permission, will you be so kind as to appoint a day for me to visit you as soon as convenient? I can come any day or hour. Please do not deny this one request. Believe me, you have my deepest sympathy and constant prayer. I am sincerely yours, Curtis Peace. Oh.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Lizzie Murder and Tea Podcast. I'm your host, Kim Eberly, and I have my co host here, Shelley Dietzick, and our special guest tonight, Keith Morrison. Welcome, welcome, everyone.
Thank you
Welcome,
very
Keith.
much.
So happy to be here. It's always exciting. I, before we start, Shelley, you have a rebuttal to that nice letter. Let's talk about the letter we just saw.
Yes, because we're so close to Valentine's Day still, uh, we thought we'd talk a little bit about maybe Lizzie's admirers or people who found her attractive, because Lizzie was a pretty girl for sure. And of course, this is a picture of her around 32, but if you've seen younger photos, she was very attractive. And, people wonder, why did she never get married? Why don't we hear of a serious boyfriend? That sort of thing. And so we decided to take a look at what we know of some stories that were either in the newspaper, letters she received in jail from a Reverend Curtis Peace, an itinerant preacher who always had an eye out for an attractive young lady who had, let's say, financial benefits in her future. And then there was a very good looking coach driver named Joseph Tatro. Emma fired him because he was a little bit too familiar with the way he talked to Lizzie, and Emma disapproved, but Lizzie rehired him. And then, of course, there's the story of the friendship with Nancy O'Neill. And those are the four that I could come up with. Of course, a lot is rumor, hearsay, and there were denials. But getting back to the first in the series of admirers of Lizzie's was
Yeah, she got that
mm,
letter in jail, right?
that's right. She got
Right.
it in jail, and after she read it, she met Reverend. I don't know if he was actually a reverend or not, preacher, Curtis Peace at the Tripp Farm. He was staying just down the road a little bit. The house he was staying in is still there. And that's where he met her. She was not impressed with him at the time. She was visiting her old chum from Fall River in Westport, which is not too far from Fall River. And Mr. Peace happened to be there, and she was not enamored of him at the time. So when she's in jail, the letter I read at the top of the program was the letter he had written to her. She promptly turned it over to Andrew Jennings. And I love the fact that she had the lawyer answer, uh, because if you have an unwanted suitor, if she had answered herself, it probably wouldn't have scared him away. But when you get a response on attorney letterhead, you tend to take it seriously. So Andrew Jennings fired back with this one. This is dated September 24th, 4 days after Lizzie received the letter, 1892. To Mr. Curtis I. Peace, P.O. Box 34, Westport, Mass. Dear Sir, your letter to Sheriff Wright and to Miss Lizzie A. Borden have been handed to me by the latter. So Lizzie gave it to Mr. Jennings, herself. For your sympathy, as for that of everybody else in her suffering, she's grateful. But she's at a loss to understand why you should presume upon her unfortunate position to open a correspondence with her or write to Sheriff Wright asking for an interview. She does not wish to see you, nor to receive letters from you. She has not, it's true, a father to appeal to, or family to compel you to cease your attempts to force yourself upon her notice. But there are others who can and will supply his place. She has told me of your previous conduct, and we can only wonder what that might have been. And I'm surprised that any man should attempt to renew it under present circumstances. Yours truly, Andrew J. Jennings. That's pretty strong stuff.
Yeah.
That would
Wow.
have worked on me. Yeah, that would have sent me
Well,
running for the hills.
we never heard from Curtis Peace anymore.
Hmm.
So I think he did cease and desist, but I
So
thought it was
why do you think he wrote that letter after years? Like it just came out of the blue, right?
I'm not sure the exact date when he first met her. I really don't know. He may have genuinely just been in sympathy with her. There's nothing really terribly untoward, I think, in his letter to her, but she was having none of it. What I like about Andrew Jennings' response is he brings up the fact that Lizzie has no male relative to, rebuff unwanted men.
Mm-hmm.
She
Mm.
is without a father. So he's thinking, boy, do you ever have nerve? But there are other people standing by to defend Miss Lizzie, and I'm one of them, Buster. So stay away. What part of no don't you understand? So I like that. I like that very much.
Yeah. So she had another love interest. I have actually a couple pictures of it's David Anthony.
Yes,
So
that was a
uh,
newspaper article.
yeah, Kenny, if you can bring up those pictures, we have one of his summer home. This
Mm.
was Anthony's summer home, which I mean, it looks like a little mansion in itself, right? So the
Mhm.
guy must have had
Mhm.
some money.
Well, yeah, it's from a meatpacking fortune. The Anthonys were self-made. It wasn't inherited big money. It uh, it came actually from meat packaging, like Swift and Armor Company. And so, like Andrew Borden, he was wealthy from hard work, and they had come quite a ways and had position in town. They had a summer place um, across the river, as did the Bordens, near the Bordens, and a lovely home in town. So he would have been a catch by anybody's standard if it had actually, worked out. I believe he was 23 when Lizzie was 32. There was a pretty big, age difference. And of course, there was nothing to it at all. It was Lizzie denied all of it. They knew each other, of course, but um, as far as them being married, it was just, people in town were always trying to marry Lizzie off. It was just a juicy story, and I think I sent Kenny. If you have the picture of the newspaper clipping about a cousin of Lizzie's, Mr. Gardner, also from Swansea, that made the paper too, that they were going to get married.
Is that wedding bells maybe? Um
Yeah, yeah, it's called Wedding Bells, and
yeah,
I believe
so that would be the sixth picture, Kenny.
they were going to get married around Christmas, so it was said, and Lizzie had her trousseau all made by, I think it was Mrs. Cummings, and who had made her wedding gown, and I believe when Lizzie finally denied it all, she actually wrote to Mrs. Cummings, who had a dressmaking business, I think down near the Granite Block, if I'm correct, and apologized for all of the trouble that this article had caused, because everybody was all excited that maybe they'd get a glimpse of Lizzie coming out of the church, I guess, on the arm of Mr. Gardner, who was, I believe, a school teacher, but he was also related to Lizzie. It was the Swansea Gardners.
Mm-hmm.
I, yeah. So um, that's another incident that proved to have no legs, just like David Anthony. And of course, Mr. Peace was spurned, and then the other friendship we know about, and that's all we know, is that it lasted about 1904 to 1906, roughly, of Nancy O'Neill.
We have a
And
picture of her too. That would be photos 3 and 4, Kenny. Yeah. This one's really controversial because it's a woman.
yeah,
And, back then that was kind of unheard of. Well, maybe not unheard of, but not publicized, women's relationships. And it's hard to say because women acted differently back then towards one another. They did talk of terms of endearment even when if they were friends. So,
well,
women
yeah,
could be
women
friends
did
and
were
yeah,
very effusive in their written communication.
right.
Uh,
They almost sounded like love letters when they wrote to each other.
yes, yes,
So,
and we know they visited. That Lizzie went to Tingsboro, where Nancy had a beautiful farm filled with animals and exciting guests and that. And most people, the take we have is that Nance really was a spendthrift. Actually, I've been corrected and told it's pronounced Nancy. I'm not
mhm.
sure, but I believe it is actually Nancy, after Nancy Oldsford, the English actress. Um, and Lizzie was very generous and happy to have friends. Uh, and we don't know that it lasted any time past 1906. Nancy was on the road all the time with productions. She was always having financial problems. Her manager was a piece of work, and she had difficulties with him. She ended up in court a few times, and Lizzie was very supportive, not only of her, but one of the troupe as well, one of Nancy's acting troupe.
Didn't
Lizzie
she
bailed out on her.
bail her out of a couple of
Yeah, yeah.
court hearings, like paid for it actually to get her out of debt or something
Yeah,
maybe? I mean, speculation, but
yeah, yeah.
that's why
And
I always
I
thought
think,
the relationship with Nance wasn't about I always thought she was like a little bit of a gold digger maybe because of Lizzie's money.
yeah, well, it was useful. Lizzie liked the
Yeah.
theater, and I think when Emma left in 1905, Lizzie was lonely at Maplecroft in that big house by herself with a couple
Yeah.
of servants. And Nancy came along at a good time and was fun, and she had fun friends. And of course, Lizzie had at least one extravagant party at Maplecroft, and rented palms, for the parlor, and went full tilt with champagne. And of course, Emma didn't approve of any of that, but theater people at Maplecroft. So,
So
uh,
really I mean, she really didn't have any love interests that we know about that were significant. I mean, I honestly believe she was a virgin her whole life and never engaged in any of that.
yeah.
And truly just, it was friendship out of need of loneliness to a lot of like her friends and I don't think she ever had a love interest. Let's put it that way.
But when Mr. Benson, who was the principal of Lizzie's grammar school, was interviewed, he remarked at the time, and he had known Lizzie a long time, because at one point he actually lived on Second Street, and he had known her since she was a child. Lizzie never had the interest in boys that
Mhm.
most young teenage girls and young people had. the girls were always chatting about this guy and that boy, and isn't he handsome, and oh, he's going to take me, to the park or skating or something. Lizzie had no interest in girlish kinds of crushes and being married. Never talked of being married, having a family, and all of that, like a lot of the other young girls did.
Hmm.
So I think you're right. I don't think she, uh, you know, had any interest in it, and an asexual sort of person.
Hmm.
Uh, uh, and that can exist, as well. The only two
So
people who
so
know
much
the
for
truth.
Valentine's Day. Hey, we're done.
We're done.
Like, no.
That was short and sweet. Lizzie's love life. Yeah, you could probably put it on the back of a penny. But those are the only four mentions I have ever run across of anything of a romantic nature. And of course, one spurned, two were inaccurate.
Well,
And
interesting enough, Emma either. I don't think
that's
Emma had
correct.
any love interest either. So
No.
both the girls, I mean, wow, that just blows my mind. And like both of them were kind of the same.
Yeah, yeah. Well, there's a lot of old maids in the Borden saga. They're all around. They're either widows or they're old maids. And if you had money, like Charles Chauve's daughter, who went to Europe with Lizzie, her name was Ellen. She never married. If you
Neither
had
did it her cousin Anna.
oh yeah, you can go on down the
Yeah,
line. Carrie and
none of them.
Anna Borden. I mean, you didn't have to get married because you were assured of a comfortable future.
Right.
Daddy had plenty of money. I mean, a lot of these young girls, married to have a home of their own, so financial security, wanted family. If you go to Oak Grove Cemetery and you go to some of the mill barons, I visited all of their graves when doing the Oak Grove book. It's amazing how many of the daughters of these kingpins of finance are not married,
Yeah.
and they didn't seek to get married. It wasn't high on their agenda.
Smart
You know,
ladies.
well, why give up independence and power and all
And
of
their
the
money
things? Yeah, and yeah,
to the
when
husband.
you didn't need to do
Right.
do it. And so Alice Russell, bless her heart, never had a beau that we know of, but that poor thing had to work and work and work to
Yeah.
support her mother.
Yeah.
So she was in a different class as like the mill girls. I mean, they were always hoping somehow to improve their situation, but these wealthy girls, and even the Borden girls, they didn't have to worry. They were all set.
Yeah. So I want to get to Keith. Welcome, Keith. For thanks for like sort of listening through these love interest people, but I just love what you do.
Oh, thank you.
Do the Lions Den Theater audio,
Hmm.
which you've been doing it for quite some time. Tell us about that.
Sure. Well, it's we founded it around 2013, and traditional theater group at first. As time went on, we've still done plays, your standard plays, but we moved into like live audio drama where we were basically doing radio plays in a live setting. And once everybody understood what we were doing and what it was, it seemed to be kind of a popular thing both to see and to partake in. So when COVID hit, it was just as I was getting ready to go on parental. So suddenly I had a little bit of time on my hands and said, well, let's see what we can do with the magic of the internet. And so basically for me, COVID was learning a lot of audio stuff. I had performed and directed live, but I'd never done any audio tech or anything like that. This was all new to me. So what it turned into was reconnecting with people from the last 30 years of doing theater and plays, and then eventually reconnecting with all sorts of new folks and doing theater and plays and whatnot. And we had because it could be done by distance. You could record things on a cell phone or you could record things on a tablet. and send them off.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the projects we had talked about doing true crime, and it kind of I'll be back. It looks like there's a
Oh, we
I'll
lost
be
him for a
back.
moment.
Yeah. Um, yeah, so we'll just give him. There's always
A
some
second.
technical difficulties, but okay.
Oh,
So,
there
yeah,
we
you're
go.
back.
So yeah, we talked about doing true crime, but we didn't want to do a lot of. There's certain topics you don't want to touch, and certainly certain topics that YouTube's and podcast um, platforms don't want you to go down. So I kind of
Really?
went, yeah, oh, yeah. Apparently,
I mean, they're censored of like, just give me an example. I'm just out of curiosity.
well, to be honest, it was more us, and currently, like with YouTube, they're being very hard on true crime creators, especially those that get into the more. I don't want to say controversial because all crime is basically
Like the OJ crime, or
no, OJ would be fine. I think when you get into like uh, children or
oh, okay,
you know
all
what I
Oh,
right,
mean, when you
yeah,
get into
yeah,
that area,
yeah.
yeah,
or um,
something
there's
just
even
really nasty.
yeah, and so I kind of have my what I've always called my big five, the ones that the big five cases I've always been super interested in. Lizzie, Jack the Ripper was
Of
never,
course, of course,
Zodiac, which has never been
interesting.
looked
Hmm.
into. Kennedy, which is so huge, and Manson, which is also
Yeah,
humongous. So we decided to do the transcript, to go through and just read the transcript. After we'd started and got the ball rolling, it was to find out Kate Lavender was doing a very similar project.
mm-hmm.
Yes.
So it was like, how do we do it a little differently than Kate is, and just to take a different spin on it, different subject matter but same subject, if you know what I mean.
Right.
So that's where it kind of that's sort of a to make a short story long. That's how we got where we're at tonight. And the one thing about the Lizzie Borden community, it was extremely welcoming. I won't say which of the others, but anytime I've tried to engage with one of the other subject matters, did X do it? I mean, it's just like I may as well have said, "Did Kermit the Frog do it?" The responses I get, But folks like Shelley and a lot of the others were just so welcoming and willing to share information and even point me in the right direction for something, because it's important I research it as well.
Yeah.
Um, so Lizzie was a good one, and as well, I mean, that what the Lizzie Borden trial means to somebody. Is very different. For me, it's a way of studying. I always say Fall River's the main character of our project, because in our project, Lizzie doesn't talk. We don't hear from her. We hear from everyone else in town, but not Lizzie
That's right.
herself.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
Now,
so
Keith, why did
Mhm.
you not do the inquest, Lizzie's inquest testimony at least? Or maybe you're
um,
going to do that.
well, Kate was doing it.
Oh, I
And
see.
so
Okay.
we'd already recorded a bit. Like I voice Moody, and my Moody stuff has been recorded since before I even asked anyone else to be involved. So I saw that Kate was doing the inquest and some other stuff, and said, well, I won't go there yet. As well, at the time, I didn't understand how important this particular inquest is, because a lot of the time the inquest is really just a kind of boring in a way, but this one is not. So I do kind of regret it in a way.
Yeah, well, the
But
inquest is like fresh out of the gate. It's like a
mhm,
couple
mhm.
days immediately after the trial. So I
Yeah,
always think people's first testimonies are the most important
for sure.
because, you're talking about what, how long, like 6 months or a year?
Mhm.
It was a year
Year, almost,
until the
almost, yeah.
trial, and people can't,
Mhm,
how can you remember?
mhm.
So,
Yes, there's still a lot to mine, and there's a couple of other things related to it. Um, I've been really blown away by the newspaper coverage, in general, both the
loved
pro
it.
Lizzie and the anti Lizzie.
Loved it.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
there's
Fascinating.
just so much to get into, and
It's overwhelming, right? When you
Mhm.
start digging into the case, and that's what I found.
Yeah,
I
Yeah.
wrote a book, Inadmissible: The Case of
for
Lizzie
sure.
Borden and Other Murderous Women,
Hmm.
and actually read all I could get my hands on for a 2 year period
Hmm.
while I was writing the book, and it still wasn't. It's never enough. I mean, we're still looking into things, and like the newspaper articles are so fascinating. What,
Hmm.
there's like 3,000 pages of trial transcripts,
Yeah, yeah,
and all the books that come out. It's just a little, like, it takes you back, and it's like, where do you start?
yeah.
So, oh, there he goes. We should name the show Poppin' something or other.
The return of Keith.
Yeah,
There
the
we go.
return of
Keith,
Keith.
I
Yeah, I'll
wanted
be
to
back.
ask you. I wanted to
Yeah.
ask you, is the Lizzie Borden and the Lizzie Borden case that well known in Canada?
Lizzie Borden as a as a historical person is. There's
Yes,
nobody. There's almost nobody in I can think of that I've said Lizzie Borden. They say who's that?
that's
Um,
amazing.
and it's a
Yeah.
lot of it's the dog roll. Took an axe. Um,
Mhm.
and what's interesting though, and it's probably the same for a lot of folks that just know surface level Lizzie, is that's about all they know. And myself included, I always say for 10 years, I thought Lizzie Borden was a 16-year-old girl who got naked and killed her parents.
Ah,
And that's the story I knew until I was about 20. And then
Mhm.
I saw something else and said, wow, this is way more interesting.
What was the first
Um,
thing? What was your first experience that made you interested in the case?
first was just a conversation with an older person and a friend of the family. Just threw out the name Lizzie Borden. I said, "Who's that?" And they said, there was a girl who, and when they said girl, I pictured younger girl, like
mhm,
16,
mhm.
17. And yeah, that was the story. I didn't know about the money, the richness. I didn't know Abby was a stepmom. Um, and a lot of that filled in when I was so be about 20 years ago. I probably saw something on A&E because I used to throw on the criminal justice shows,
Mm,
back when A&E played such things. Was it like American Justice and Cold
yeah.
Case Files, that block of TV. And then I said, okay, there's a lot more to this. And I mean, I'm in
So
Nova Scotia. Yeah.
the more you got into it, did you
Mhm.
get confused more, or do by now, do you have some clarity? That Do
Oh
you
yeah.
have an opinion of whether she's done it or not, and you want to
I've been
share that?
hope. Yeah, she was, in my opinion, did it alone by herself. 100% guilty. Sorry, those who think otherwise. I I see nothing that see. I've grown to become very sympathetic to Abby, and to some extent
Oh,
Andrew.
yes,
Um,
yes. I
Abby's story
understand
breaks my
that.
heart. Um,
Mm,
like when I read about Abby, and actually some of this project comes from trying to write a project, a small one-act play from Abby's
yes,
perspective.
yes.
Um,
Nice.
she, my heart goes out to Abby. My heart goes out to Bridget, um, and Andrew as well. I mean, there's a lot of cranky penny pinchers out there that you know don't deserve an
Mm,
axe to the head, if
mm,
I may.
Of course.
exactly. Yeah.
You know.
Mhm.
And I've kind of, with Lizzie, I've gotten an impression of severe entitlement, some cranky, mean, possibly mental illness. I just don't get I don't get good vibes from Lizzie at all as a human being. I don't see her as a hero, and
Mm.
you know,
Well, I think you're right on. I totally agree. The last chapter in my book is, oh, come on, she did it. So I didn't hold back. So it was just my opinion. But I think the relationship with Abby and Lizzie and Emma, And in Bridget, and I told Shelley this many times, that I always felt like Bridget was kept there as a buffer, because at some point Abby, they gave her extra money to keep her on. She wanted to leave at some point, and I think they gave her like more of a salary, and I felt that way, that the relationship was more between Bridget and Abby
Oh
than
yeah, yeah.
Bridget and Lizzie and Emma. I thought maybe they didn't get along. Am I correct on that, Shelley? Or I
That's the impression I get. And it was said that Bridget was very fond of Mrs. Borden, sort of sympathetic toward her. Um, Bridget, I wish she would have been more forthcoming. I think she's one person in the story that could have filled in a lot of blanks. But being her social position and her, it was of the culture of the time where the employee didn't go trash the employer
Mhm.
or spread a lot of unpleasant, if you wanted to get a reference or you wanted to work. I think Bridget was very circumspect in how much she said and how she phrased it. I think she, at the trial too, I believe she had a little bit of coaching by the defense.
Oh, for sure, for sure.
Yeah.
Uh, that
So
selective memory of hers. Yeah.
Joanne Walker wants to know: has Keith been to Fall River and the Second Street house?
Yeah, I saw that. COVID has canceled 3 trips planned to the Second
Oh,
Street house.
oh,
One
that
under,
stinks.
no, actually two under the old management, one under the current. I'm in Canada. There's extra border issues at times.
Right,
It is
right.
something. It is something I want to go to, and I have every intention of doing as soon as I can. My daughter Lizzie, totally a coincidence. My daughter, she yeah, she wants to stay in Lizzie's room, and yeah, it's something we're really hoping to pull off. I've
Oh,
done when the house was for sale. There's a 3D virtual tour
yes.
that was on, I think, My Mattersport, and I've used some of the images in our project. I have gone through that. It's as best as I've gotten. I've sat there with scones and tea and roamed through that. It kills me that I haven't been there yet.
Well, I
Well, I
think one
can't
of
wait.
I was going to say, I
It'd be
think
nice.
one of the reasons Lizzie Borden's story, the Lizzie Borden story has been so popular is because you can visit the house. Like
Yes.
a
Yeah.
lot of true crimes, you can't. The places are long gone, and this is from the
Mhm.
1800s, and it's still there. So when you walk
Yeah.
Yes.
into the house, you feel like you're back in that century, and it just gives you like a different feeling. I mean, it really is exciting, Keith.
Yeah.
You should
Yeah.
get there as soon as possible. 'Cause-
And
It's funny.
I'll be waiting to give you the grand tour when you get here.
Absolutely.
Can't wait.
Um, it's Jack the Ripper, of course, another one. There's only one.
Yes, mine
There's only
too.
one. There's only
Favorite.
one space or one crime scene spot left
Yeah.
in any. It's only 4 years in the difference, but everything else is paved over, or buildings, or there's
A
a chip
parking
shop
lot.
somewhere.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah. So
Yeah, so there's a
I,
couple people on the feed that said they'll be there too if you want to visit. They'll meet up with you.
I would love that. Like I've come to get to know, like, Fall River, the similarities between Fall River. I grew up in Cape Breton, Nova Scotia. Ours was a mining town. Our divisions were not so much. Well, I guess it's definitely certainly class, but religion as well, Catholic, Protestant.
Mm.
And Fall River in so many ways reminds me of the town I grew up in, because there was still a lot of that. You know, my father used to tell stories about certain aunts that wouldn't let, the Catholics are not allowed in to eat. They can eat on the front step, or the Protestants aren't allowed to play on the wings and stuff like that.
Wow. Wow.
So to get down and meet folks would be absolutely fantastic. And it's something we had actually talked with some of the cast about pooling our money and going down and having our cast party there.
Yeah, and Robin Millerick is saying too, if you visit Fall River, of course you have to go to the Historical
Oh
Society
yeah.
because they have the most um, artifacts from the trial. I remember I was so excited because they actually had the hatchet head
Oh
there on
wow. Yeah.
exhibit, and also they had the historical society changes out things
Mm.
periodically when you go to visit. So the time that I was there, they had the actual photo of the
Oh
juror,
wow.
the
Yeah.
guys that gave that picture to Lizzie. I guess
Hmm.
they sent it over to her house. I don't know if she hung it above her fireplace or what.
Hmm.
But it was exhibited there, and it was just amazing to see that the
You'll
actual
want to
photo.
come in, but I think May to October
Yeah. Yeah.
because they do close, to decorate for the Christmas extravaganza
For sure.
in December, which is worth another trip down here. There's a lot to show you though when you get here. That's
Yeah,
a,
Shelley, we
a
were just talking about the Taunton River. I mean, the Fall. I always thought
Quequechan,
that Fall
Quequechan.
River was
Yeah,
named
yeah.
after the hills and
Mm.
like the houses built on these hills, and it looked like they were falling into
Hmm.
the river. But Shelley corrected me yesterday.
Yeah,
So it's about the river and
it's
the
a
Hmm.
native
waterfall.
it's a Native American word, Quequechan,
Mm.
that
Okay.
means the falling water. And at one
Hmm.
point, right where 195 goes under the city hall and the old Herald building, you can see from the highway, was an
Hmm.
amazing waterfall. You could see it. And there are a couple of spots in the city, one over near Third Street, Hartnell and Third Street, where you can see a little bit of the river. They had to put it underground. There's been a lot of talk about daylighting the river again. It was beautiful.
Mm.
And I understand that Fall River has the only city hall built on an overpass over a major interstate highway because
Hmm.
they had to rechannel the river so they could put that through there.
Mm.
That's a mixed blessing. There are people who don't like it at all. And I'd like to see the river, of course. And there are a couple of places you can still see it. At one point, and I forgot to
Wait,
mention
when
this
you
the
go
other
over
day.
that big bridge going into Fall River, isn't that the
Mm,
river?
That's the Taunton. You're
Oh,
crossing the
the
Taunton.
Taunton
That
River.
that
Okay.
goes from Swansea. You cross that, and there's also the Quequechan. I
Yeah.
hope I'm
Okay.
saying it with the right Fall River pronunciation.
Yeah.
But there was some talk at one point because Third Street used to have a little bridge that crossed the river, the water, and you can still see, as I mentioned, a little spot of it is still visible. And that maybe the murder weapon was tossed off the Third Street Bridge into the river and had been washed away. It's not very far from the Borden house, but I mean, who
Mm.
would have done it? Who would have
Yeah. Right. Who would
spirited?
have? Oh, Dr. Bowen put it in his bag and did it
Oh, there you go. We can come up with an
because
answer.
they never checked his
Yeah.
bag. That's still like okay.
Well, he was another one I'd read quite a bit about being a love interest with Lizzie, and I think it was all just
Oh,
Oh,
you
that
know.
one little
yeah.
thing that they went
Yeah,
to church together, right?
yeah, and somebody went to town with that one
That
time,
old
and
man.
yeah.
Well, a dirty old man. I know. Abby and Andrew were out of town.
Mhm.
But
Right.
without cell phones and stuff,
Mhm.
there's so much gossip. And when we get
Yeah.
to the Jennings Journal, people watched each other,
Mhm.
even in my day. And
Yeah,
I'm
but
not.
would
Yeah.
an old man like
Mm,
that take a young woman out to church back in
Of
those days?
course,
It's
I think it was
yeah.
totally innocent, but
Yeah.
the fact
Okay.
that they were alone and Mrs. Bowen wasn't with them and Lizzie had no other female companion.
Right.
If
Mhm.
Alice Russell had gone along, there'd have been no juicy story
Yeah.
there. But
Yeah.
folks were always on the lookout for some tidbit to talk
Mhm.
about. And we haven't changed that much. We just now get our cell phones out and send it, IM it to somebody. In those days, it was behind closed doors and it
Mhm.
traveled like lightning.
Mhm.
So there you go.
Mhm.
People are people, no matter what century.
So Keith, you're doing the
Mhm.
audio. Are you still doing the audio for
Yeah,
different parts of the trials?
You're up to
sure. Yeah.
day 4. You're day 4 now.
Yeah, day 4, part
Yeah.
5, or sorry, day 4, where Fleet is about to come up on the stand. We're going to do Cunningham, Wixon, Allen, and Fleet are the next one. They're all cut, and Fleet is just being tweaked a little bit from
So
some
when you
sound
do
issues on
those
my end.
and listen
Mhm.
to that, does it change your opinion of people and the conduct and like the police investigation? I mean, it like we were talking about that. It's totally different hearing it than
Mhm.
reading it.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
Absolutely, yeah.
yeah.
And that's the thing. I'm one of the few that doesn't mind reading that sort of stuff, but when you're hearing it, it comes to life. So certain things really, it's. I think a good way to put it is my understanding of the facts doesn't change too much, but my understanding of kind of the emotion behind a lot of the stuff, like,
Mm.
and I don't know, maybe it's the performance of some of these actors, but I know like one performer, the Jen Tubbert was her name, played Bridget, and there's times where it rips your heart out hearing her talk about things and how understated she had to be about a lot of things. Like Shelley
Hmm.
mentioned, I mean, the worst
Hmm.
thing for any servant to do was to tell tales outside of the house. You know,
If you wanted to
Well,
if
have
you
and
a
wanted to work, yeah.
reference, if you
and I
wanted to work,
think
yeah.
amongst the women, and it's something that I wrote a little bit in my book, was the relationships that women back then had with each other.
Hmm.
There was, as well as men, there was a code of silence. Like they would never talk about anything outside their group to
Hmm.
incriminate anybody. So I think there was a lot of things that these women knew, but they weren't talking
Sure.
because of that strong bond,
Hmm.
you know.
Well, look at the letter from Elizabeth Johnson. She refused to give it over because there
Hmm.
might be a misunderstanding about something that Lizzie had written,
Was
and
that when they were at the girls that were at the vacation house that they sent that letter? Is that the one
it
you're
was
talking about?
the night of the murder. Lizzie had written to Miss Johnson,
Mm.
Elizabeth Johnson, and Miss Johnson was one of the the rat pack that went up to Dr. Handy's, and they were one of her lady friends that ran in the same circles, and I know Knowlton wanted to get that letter,
Right,
and
right. And they
yeah,
wouldn't hand it over,
badly.
right? Yeah.
And yeah, and Jennings did his fancy dancing, and no, you don't have to make that available to the
Mm.
prosecution. And
And
I
it's
want to
things
know
like
what was in that letter.
yeah, it's things like that were inadmissible or not included in the trial
Hmm.
that are the
Yeah,
interesting
yeah.
things that we'll never know, but it always weighs heavily on like what they were trying to get at.
Well, it's so funny to me. And one of the big 5 I forgot, so it's actually a big 6 is O.J. Simpson case.
Oh yes.
The similarities between the two, right down to stuff like that, and
Mm-hmm.
it's just it floors me sometimes if you go into even the makeup of the prosecution and the defense teams. There are just so many parallels between. Now OJ had 55 lawyers and Lizzie had
Yeah.
3, but
Well, those lawyers
you know.
were on all accounts were paid handsomely in
Mhm.
both trials.
Yeah.
They had like powerhouse,
Mhm.
people. And yeah, I watched the OJ trial. Wow.
Yeah,
If the
Every
yeah.
glove doesn't
day.
fit,
Mhm.
you
You must
you
have quit.
you must have quit. I mean,
Yeah.
it's like
I wanted to ask you, Keith,
Yeah.
did you have trouble finding enough people to participate as different characters? And I noticed you use a woman from time to time to do a man's speaking part.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. And so were
That
these all friends of yours, or did
these
you
are
audition?
the vast majority of the early ones were collaborators that work with me usually. The Some of the later ones are folks that I've reconnected with over the project. And Robinson and Adams are voiced by women.
Hmm.
And that was as much a stylistic thing as I could have gone a different way with that. But assuming the trial happened today, there would be women voices there, and it gives a
Yes.
different it gives a very different sound rather than just, five men barking at each other. You have women, and Christine, who voices Robinson, is a tremendous voice actor in
Hmm.
general, and it's just a pleasure to work with. So a lot of it's that cross casting is kind of the way to go these days.
It seems
Um,
to be, yes.
yeah, for better or worse. I know I have gotten a couple messages saying like, why is that a woman, or why are they saying yes sir to a woman? But I mean, again, what the text is what really matters. Yeah, but and when I asked her, I said, "Would you like to play a lawyer?" She said, "Well, we'll see." I said, "Well, you'll play Lizzie's lead defense attorney." Okay, I'm in. So
That was it.
Who wouldn't want to? I would.
yeah.
Yeah.
We have a
For me,
question.
I was 100%. I was
Yeah.
Moody or bust, and I hoped that no one else, because I took the last one, and I hoped nobody.
Yeah, we have a question from Erica. Where can we hear your, other than YouTube, is there another place we can hear your audio project?
Not yet. I
Not
have
yet.
I have another project. It's completely different. We chronicle the Saturday Night Live throughout the years. So we've started with episode 1, and we just finished season 1.
I
That's
saw
over
that. Yeah.
that's over at Podbean. So we're going to be slowly putting them up on Podbean as well. It's a Lions Den Audio Theater. So yeah, that's
So who? And I'm going to put this out to both you, Keith, and Shelley. Who would you have liked to seen brought up on the stand that wasn't like called to testify? Mine is Anna, her cousin that went on the cruise with her. I would have
mhm,
liked to heard more from her about
Hmm.
conversations and
Oh, well, I
yeah.
I wanted Bence at the trial, and he
Oh
made it.
right,
Yeah,
yes,
that's my man.
that would have been
I'm a,
awesome, right?
well, he made it through the prelim, but
yeah.
Yeah.
he didn't make it for the big show, and I wish he had been called. And
Mhm,
also Kilroy and Hart, their testimony
mhm.
was very striking to
Who were
me.
they? Who were they? Kilroy and Hart.
They were the two men that were in D.R. Smith's pharmacy when the lady came in to ask about the prussic acid, and Mr. Hart recognized her as Andrew Borden's daughter, and Kilroy. I mean, there were three men that were in agreement. Bence
Mhm.
agreed when he went to the house. He identified her by her voice and also by looking at her down that long corridor from the side door into the kitchen. But that wasn't allowed, and the dress burning incident and Lizzie's inquest testimony, Moni, those three very important things. Lizzie was very lucky. Those were not allowed to
Mhm.
Well,
be
her
to be
inquest
considered.
testimony I thought was so
Mhm.
incriminating.
Mm,
Mhm.
I
well,
mean, it
all
was
over the
just
place. Yeah.
unreal.
Yeah, I'm much the same. I think if those if you have more than just one person saying that's who I saw, it gives it a little bit more. I mean, the big answer is I would have loved Lizzie to have testified herself, but
Oh,
you know, I saw that
me
question.
too.
I think it was
Mhm.
on your page there a couple days ago, Kimbra, and that was a real head scratcher for me. But it did come down to the pharmacy for me. It's if they could have placed her there and
Mhm.
assured that it was nobody else.
Mm.
That's as close to a smoking gun as I think the prosecution didn't get.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, to believe Lizzie is telling the truth, a lot of other people must not be telling the truth.
Mhm,
That's what it boils down to
mhm,
me. I mean, how far out there do you have to? Well, you were wrong, and you were wrong, and you were wrong. But
mhm.
Lizzie's telling the truth.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, I
that's
think
kind of
one
the.
really important thing to me is motive, and
Mhm.
that's always been the case. And Shelley and I, we had a 2 hour conversation yesterday. We should never get on the phone because we
No.
never get off. But they're great conversations, and I learned so much. And the bottom line is like for motive. Like you could see somebody wanting to kill Andrew, maybe for business dealings. But why would they even want to have killed Abby? and then both of them. It just doesn't make sense to me, like a motive for both a husband and a wife.
Yeah.
So that to me is like a smoking gun for me, because if Lizzie was gonna kill Abby, and then wait an hour later to do Andrew, and when he came
Mhm.
home and wasn't supposed to come home, it was unexpected. I believe she killed him because he knew her so well that he knew that she would have killed
Mhm.
Abby. So she maybe had to dispose of him too. I mean, that's my thought, but I mean, there's so many intertwining things you could go with.
We have a question here from Pam Howe. How do you all feel about the inquest testimony being excluded? Should it have been excluded?
I don't. I mean, it it was damning for the prosecution. Um, Whether or not it should have been or not, I honestly don't know enough about justice, like the rule of law at the time. Um, However, sort of half yes, half no, I think would be the right answer as
Well,
to, you know.
yeah, I wish it had been included, but I understand why it had to be
Mhm, mhm,
stricken, because Lizzie had been pretty much in essence told she was a suspect,
mhm,
and she gave her inquest freely without legal counsel.
mm.
And of
Yeah, wasn't it
course,
like she wasn't read her Miranda rights by today's standards or something?
yeah,
Or she,
well, she didn't say anything she said could
yeah,
Mhm,
be later used against her, and
right, right.
she didn't have Mr. Jennings um,
Present,
at at her disposal
yeah.
mhm,
for counsel, and
Boy, they
under
were
those
really slick with
yeah.
that, right?
yeah.
But they, they caused their own problem. So by
In
doing that,
some cases, yeah,
yeah.
there were a lot of missteps all along, from the police to the mayor, and yeah, yeah.
So
Go
Keith,
back.
besides the audio with your actors group, Lions Den, um, are you going to do any live performances? Do you have anything up your sleeve that Lizzie Wise that you're working on?
I would love to finish my story from the perspective of Abby. My That would be
Yeah, yeah.
a one act. People keep hitting me saying do blood relations, do a live version of blood relations. That's absolutely possible. My mind has gone so far from from live stuff because of the current situation. But absolutely, it's something that's totally up there. I mean, you could condense the trial down to a play size, like theater size piece, and whip it through that. There are things definitely in the air. I'd also like to explore something pertaining to the jury and how the jury reached their verdict. I think that could be
Mm.
an interesting story.
Yeah, I always kind of wanted to do it from the police perspective.
Mm.
What they had to deal with, and the
Yeah,
the
that might
little
be coming up soon.
Mm.
conversations going back and
Very
forth,
soon.
and
Yeah, I hear from Randy in Texas, who's interested in seeing us interview someone who believes that Lizzie is innocent.
Mhm.
Uh, I don't know. There's not a living soul who knows the answer to this.
Mhm.
I tend to think most likely she had something to do with it, but statistically speaking, the statistic about when there's a double parricide, it's usually someone who lives in the house, a family member,
Mhm.
or son or daughter, like the Menendez case. So statistically, you know, there's a good chance that she's involved. But
Mhm.
that's a good point. I would also
yeah,
like to interview someone who thinks she's completely innocent.
yeah.
It
And
Mhm.
would
Randy,
be
you should write to us and let us know your feelings on it, because I know you think that she was innocent. So
Mhm.
write to us and give us your thoughts on it, and we'll be happy to put it up. I mean,
Well,
You know, I
people get so they like Lizzie so much from what they read,
yeah.
and they're so sympathetic. There was actually a group back in the 1960s formed by Bill Raby called the Friends of Lizzie Borden,
Yeah.
and I get mail all the time through my website and Facebook pages and media that are very angry with me.
Mhm.
And boy, some of the letters
Yeah.
um,
Hey,
they don't like to even consider that she might have something to do with it.
I have a quick question for Keith. Actually, Rena, I think, is coming on for her tea
Awesome.
Ah,
demonstration. So we got Rena. And we'll see how her show went too, because she's, like I
Sweet.
said, an
Wicked.
actor. They were doing a closing. But Keith, have you ever read the only interview that Lizzie did in jail? I think it was with Mrs. Livermore. I believe, interviewed her, and she went
Mhm.
through this scenario. Well, she kind of got a little snippy and said, "Well, if I would have done it, why would I have done it in the day? I could have done it at night when nobody was around." Like, it was like similar to what OJ did when
If
he
I
did
did it,
that.
yeah.
that's why he did
Lizzie
it.
did it
Yeah.
Yeah.
too, and if you haven't read that little snippet of an interview, I'll send it to you because it's really, to
Mhm.
me, that was another thing that I made me believe that she was guilty
Yeah.
because of that interview.
Yeah, and I mean, just further too. I mean, you know, and just to like Randy's point, conspiracy to me is a very interesting thing. And if if Emma had perhaps said, I wouldn't mind if the old woman took an axe to the head, and Lizzie said, okay, that's conspiracy. You know what
Yeah,
I mean? I could never ever rule out conspiracy. John Morris, I the guy was weird. I hate putting it that blunt. The guy
yeah.
was just an eccentric dude. Did
Yeah,
Emma say
yeah.
something?
Well, I
Quite
think weirdness
possibly.
ran in his family, so
Yeah,
Well,
yeah,
all the Morses were peculiar.
yeah,
yeah.
all of them.
Except for any that are watching tonight.
But
Wonderful
Yeah.
but
people.
but crazy enough, even the
Mm.
mother Sarah,
Mhm.
I think her
Yeah.
friend, like she had friends in very with that were involved with the women's suffrage movement
Mhm.
and stuff. So that part of that piece of it amazed me too.
Mhm.
That Lizzie's biological mother was friends had friends
Mhm.
that were in the suffrage movement, women.
For sure.
So that says a lot. And even Lizzie later in life had friends of women that were had power. Like the
Mhm.
one friend she had down in Washington was her husband was Roosevelt's.
Grace Hartley Howell, you're
Yeah,
speaking
Yeah.
of. Yeah,
right.
yeah.
She was
Mm.
huge, and Lizzie was friends with her, and she
Mhm.
was very
Well,
politically involved.
yeah,
So
they were related actually. Yeah, they
yeah,
were
Yeah.
related.
yeah.
Mm.
But wasn't
She
she
was
married?
Fall River.
Her husband worked for Roosevelt or something. President
Yeah, she
Roosevelt.
she married she married Louis B. Howell,
Right.
and they're all buried in Fall River Oak Grove Cemetery. But Louis B. Howell was Roosevelt's right hand man. Grace Hartley Howell, his wife, was Fall River's first female postmistress,
Hmm.
Yeah.
and she was a tour de force all on her own, a lady ahead of her time. The suffragettes were also very supportive of Lizzie during the trial,
Yes. Yes, they were,
and
which is
and they
interesting. Yes.
showed up with signs and picketed the courthouse and
So
yeah, so
I always like to look at people not directly involved with the trial, but the other people surrounding, like the friends and the people that she surrounded herself with, which are fascinating. And they were very in tune, especially the women in the women's
mhm.
movement, not marrying, the whole patriarchal thing going on. And that's why it didn't surprise me that, you know, like, well, the motive, of course, was money and wanting a life of your own and not living in that patriarchal society. But anyway, Rena's coming on. She's going to do her little tea demonstration for us, and then we'll get back into. I guess we'll talk about the Jennings journal, some of the things.
Oh, and I have a few more questions for Keith too on how
Yeah,
you go about doing this sort of thing that he does so well.
yeah. Hey, Rena.
Hi, everyone.
I
Hey,
have
can
to
you hear
ask
me?
first. How was your show?
Show went great. I'm wearing my little show hoodie. It's a show dealing with grief and loss, something that
Mm,
Lizzie never really seemed to have dealt with or had extreme feelings about from everything that I've read. And Keith, it
yeah.
sounds so interesting. You doing live performances relating to it. Really, really
Thanks so
cool.
much.
Rena's
Yeah.
lives in Staten Island with me. She's an actress, and
Yeah.
they do Shakespearean theater and all kinds of things. And she's been in a short film of mine, a couple, and
Yep.
a couple of shows also that
Neat.
we've done. So
And
anyway, let's talk tea. Well, go
go
ahead,
ahead.
Keith. Were you gonna say something?
Oh no,
Oh,
I
yeah,
was just
Keith.
gonna say I've watched every episode. I missed one, but every episode you guys have done, and I'm a complete tea junkie myself. So this is
Yay.
a big moment for me.
Oh,
Oh,
thanks. Well, tonight I decided to do something a little different because in my Rena's Tea House community, which is my Facebook page that I use, this week we did a whole Girl Scout cookie tea pairing thing. And also because of Valentine's Day, that today I'm doing a chocolate based cocktail. Sort of two drinks for everybody, one caffeine free and one with caffeine. This month we have a really cool chocolate tea exclusive, which has 6 different teas ranging from caffeine free and caffeinated. And so tonight I'm using 2 of these teas. I'm using chocolate chip truffle black tea, which is
oh,
a caffeinated tea. And I'm also using, where is it? Mint chocolate chip rooibos tea. Rooibos tea is
mm.
probably a tea that Lizzie didn't drink because I don't think rooibos tea made it to the US or was even really very commonly used outside of South Africa at this time. It's a South African plant. But this is caffeine free. All rooibos is naturally caffeine free. And I decided to make some Girl Scout cookie inspired cocktails with them. So to make things quick, I pre-brewed everything. But all I did was I took a double walled glass, which I have these really neat little cute, you can see they're like glitter cups. And this is the double bubble cup. And I took my universal infuser, which is an easy infuser, took 1 scoop of the tea to brew it hot. And I wanted to show this to you. This is the chocolate chip truffle. This is an exclusive tea to this set, but just check out all the colors in that.
Ooh, that looks
You can see
good.
the blue and the red, and it's just
Yeah.
it's just so pretty. Loose leaf tea is just so pretty. Oh, and this is, I wish there was smell-o-vision. I say this probably every week, but it's just so good.
You could send us
Um,
a scratch and sniff.
yeah, scratch and sniff tea. And so I just took 1 scoop, put it in, added my hot water, left a little room at the top because I added ice to it to cool it quicker. And now I have my 2 teas. This is my chocolate chip truffle, and this is my chocolate mint rooibos. You can see they both brew pretty dark. Rooibos tea is a great substitute for black tea when you want a naturally caffeine-free tea in the evening. A lot of rooiboses, they have that sort of full-bodied feeling that you'd get from black tea, but it's not black tea. Any tea that says it's decaf is actually lying. And by the way, I froze on my screen. Am I still okay with you?
You're still good here.
Yeah, we see you.
Woohoo! Excellent, excellent. So yeah, rooibos tea, great alternative for evening when you want something has that fulfilling tea feel without the caffeine. Because decaf tea, first off, it still has caffeine in it when it's pulled, and it's chemically removed, which is not such a great thing. So I love naturally decaf teas because they're always decaf. Well, so our 2 drinks tonight are going to be based off of these 2 cookies. One is the Tagalog or the peanut butter patties, and the other one is Thin Mints, which they're both favorites, but Thin Mints are my absolute favorite. So let's start off with our Tagalog, this is so simple. You just make a chocolate tea, and it really can be any kind of chocolate tea you like. And you're going to add 1 ounce of Screwball peanut butter whiskey. It's as simple as that. It's just
Is that for
chocolate.
real? I've never heard of that.
Oh, this is one
Yes.
of my favorite things to drink.
Yeah.
I love peanut butter, and this peanut butter whiskey, when I discovered it,
Wow.
it became
It
a
is.
quick,
It is
quick
good.
favorite.
I have some. Yes,
Wow.
it's strong.
Yeah, it is quite strong. So 1 ounce,
Yes.
1 ounce is all you need. 1 ounce of most alcohols is about 100 calories. So this entire cocktail is 100 calories. because, or maybe actually I'm wrong. It's 105 calories. This particular tea is 5 calories. But it's pretty good for having a sweet, delicious cocktail. And all you do, you stir it up, and now you have a chocolate peanut butter cocktail. Simple as that. You can add alcohol to any kind of tea. Hot toddies are the most commonly known version of this, but I like, obviously, doing special different ones. So to make our thin mint tea, I have my mint chocolate rooibos tea, all brewed. Rooibos tea you brew for about or steep, I should say, for 5 minutes. Black tea is usually 2 to 3 minutes. So this is all set, and I'm going to add 2 ounces of alcohol to this one. This one's a stronger drink, but it is caffeine free. We have Bailey's Irish Cream, and
I know that one.
Yes, you can do this one with just Bailey's, but I like a little more of a chocolate edge to it. But the Bailey's, strangely, really brings out the mint flavor in it. So I'm just pouring it into my glass, and I'm going to do 1 shot of Godiva chocolate liqueur. Again, you can do just a double shot of Bailey's in it instead, but I like my chocolatiness. So
that looks so good, Rena.
It's so good. I will be drinking the caffeine-free one, and my husband will get the caffeine because I can't do caffeine this late unless I want to be up for a while. So he's fine at any time of day. So now just stir it up again, and you have an amazing thin mint cocktail. Oh, that is so good. Oh. And if you're a fan of like mint chocolate chip ice cream, that one really has, because of the creaminess, it kind of has that feeling as well. So that is a lovely beverage. It's really neat, all the things that you can do with tea and alcohol. One thing that Sipology carries is this thing, it's called a tea canter. It's actually a wine canter that you add. I don't know if you can see, it has like little holes at the bottom to be a strainer. It's shaped in a particular way. So you take your scoops of tea, maybe take 3 pot of tea scoops instead, and you add it in there. You add whatever fruit you might want. And then so you have your tea in here, your fruit. Then you take up to 2 bottles of wine and pour it in, and it aerates as it goes down this jar. You leave it overnight. You could also add brandy if you want to do various sangrias. And you have infused wine to make your own sangrias with just tea. Yeah. I highly recommend fruit teas for that. And again, we've talked about it before. Fruit teas are not true teas. They are fruit infusions, but anything that you steep in water, we sort of commonly refer to as teas. Like rooibos technically isn't a tea either, but we drink them as teas. And fruit teas are amazing when infused in alcohol. I did a gin one earlier, I think my first one that I did, the Down the Hatchet, where I infused the tea directly into the gin. Yeah, Down the Hatchet. And you can do the same thing with the wine. And we even have like a sangria guide on what teas and wines to use. So it is really neat. And I'm going to be talking more about some of these on my tea page. If you wanted to check out the Girl Scout cookie tea pairings, just check out Rena's Tea House community on Facebook. And
yeah, I can throw it up on the comments feed, like your or even you, if you want to throw it up on the comments, like the link to where
I just noticed the comments.
Yeah. To where
Cicerone to your tea. Awesome. I'm seeing some of the comments now. Oh, yeah. Cute. Cool.
Yeah, you had me at chocolate.
Oh, this set is, I was so happy when they released this. It is only available the month of February. And if you spend $65 or more on the site, you can get this for, I think it's $22.50, and it comes with 6 chocolate teas. The teas, I already said this, where I lost it, but my chocolate chip, there it is. Chocolate chip truffle black tea is exclusive to this set. This has one of the best smells ever on a tea. Mint chocolate chip rooibos is available in our catalog, usually in full-size bags. This is another exclusive caramel bonbon black tea.
Oh,
we have cocoa mint black tea, which is as of tomorrow, I think, is the last day it's available in the catalog, but it's
Oh,
available
wow.
the rest of the month in this collection. And then French chocolate pu'er tea.
Mm.
Pu'ers are my favorites. They are the strongest. They are made from the same tea plant as black tea, white tea, green tea, but it's fermented and processed in a different way. And so it's a stronger tea, higher caffeine. And it also comes with a pack of steeping sacks, which is
Oh,
like make your
nice.
own tea bags.
Yeah, we could always use that.
And the nutrition packs. And the nutrition packs. And you can see 0 calories for everything except for the one tea that I used here. It's just
so the
really,
one day
really
you came over to Rena came over to our artist market and we were drinking tea, Shelly. All day long we were drinking tea. I felt like doing cartwheels out in the street after that. I was like, whoa, like because we were trying out the
we were doing
sangria
tea.
ones, and it was.
We were doing tea and matcha, so we had
right,
a lot
so
of caffeine.
we were like, I could have probably 5 conversations at one time. You know, it's like really hopped up on tea. But it is really good tea. It's excellent, and you'll be happy to know, Keith, that the company Sipology is based out of Canada.
I looked it up the other day.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I will be looking into it a bit.
I ordered a few things. Really good, really good.
If you need a Canadian sipologist, because unfortunately you can't order through me to ship to Canada, but I have lots of friends from Canada.
That's so weird.
Who are sipologists.
Sweet.
So let me know. And if you're in the U.S., feel free. My website is www.sipology.com/Rena, RINA. And that's my personal site.
I'll be joining the Facebook group. So yeah.
Awesome.
Hey, when are we going to have a tea party? We need to get together for a tea party soon.
That sounds great. I love doing this live. I found that out thanks to Kim inviting me for vendor events. It's so much fun to make tea and talk about it with live people.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
My first cup of tea, there's a photograph I have somewhere. My very first cup of tea was given to me in a baby bottle. It's probably child abuse now, but in the early 80s, there is a picture of me sitting on my uncle's lap with a baby bottle, and there's a fair bit of tea in it.
That's so funny.
Yeah, so it's I'm a lover, and my wife, actually, I got evicted from my chair there. My wife wanted to take my spot so she could zoom into the camera as you were demonstrating.
Well, thanks for coming and sharing, Rena, and we're going to go on to the Jennings Journal, but we're so happy to have you all the time, and congratulations on the show, and I'm looking forward to more of your stuff. I think you're doing some Shakespearean things.
We're directing this summer. Yeah, we're directing.
Awesome.
So
yeah, I'm so happy for you.
Thank you.
Yeah. So
Life
tell
is
Jack
good.
I said hi.
I will.
And we will see you soon.
See you soon. Thanks,
All right,
everyone.
Rena. All right.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye. Oh, Keith, I still have a couple of questions for you.
For sure.
But, going back to tea, I wanted to just add real quickly because I know there's probably a lot of Agatha Christie fans out there. Harney and Sons have produced a line of Christie teas. I'm getting them for the canisters. One is an Earl Grey called Murder on the Orient Express, and the other one I just got today was Death on the Nile, and it was released to coincide with the new version with Kenneth Branagh that opened a couple days ago. So I think they're going to have a whole line of Agatha Christie tea from Harney and Sons you can get on Amazon. But now I want to ask you one question before we jump into Jennings Journals. When you do these audio things, do you have like a studio with all kinds of equipment? Where are they recorded?
No, actually, it's in the early days. It was use a cell phone, use a tablet, use whatever you can, and some of the audio that hasn't gone out yet is still been recorded that way. The last little while, some folks really enjoyed it, so they invested in microphones and
Yes.
up their game a little bit.
Mhm.
So right now, it's all done by yourself when you had the chance. Send it to me. I'm going to go through it very, very thoroughly, and I will be asking for certain lines to be redone.
Mhm.
That includes myself, my moody stuff. Going forward, it's so much easier. And see, I wanted it to be inclusive, and I wanted people from, I have friends in Australia who've worked with us. They did the Hound of the Baskervilles with us, and they recorded in actually New Zealand. I'm sorry. They recorded in New Zealand. We had someone record their stuff in China and send it to me, and we put it together.
Wow.
That works on one level in the fact you
Wow.
can include a lot of people.
It's amazing.
Yes.
Yeah.
And one thing, like, when you can control the audio and everybody's levels are the same, it makes the edit side so much easier. So our next big project is going to probably be recorded in person together. Same mics, same setup.
Mhm.
Because it did, like, our very first play we did this way was Reefer Madness, and we had
That's good.
yeah,
I know
I
that
did
movie well. So
I did my own adaptation of that one, and we had one person using a $10,000 setup and another person using a very old smartphone. So it was trying to get that audio to
yeah.
match. It's tricky,
I would think so.
Yeah.
Wow. Now, I wanted to ask you also,
Mhm.
are there grants for this kind of project history that you can apply for, recording historical transcripts and that sort of thing?
I think Canada has a lot of that kind of stuff, right?
We do, and I'm in the early stages of that. I basically I was, your struggling artist dependent on grants like 20 years ago, and then I kind of got out of it, and still did it on the side, but so there was a period of time there where I kind of fell out. Oh, I think I lost everyone. Just one sec.
Yeah, we see you. We can still see you. Uh,
It's one of those nights.
yeah. Is Mercury in retrograde? I'm not sure. Ah,
He's
there we
back.
Hello.
go. Yeah.
Yeah,
Always a surprise. Mhm.
there certainly are. There's a lot right now. Like the Lizzie project itself, it would be trickier to get a grant from. It's not local. There's not much Canadian implication, and I've tried.
Ah,
Significance. You got to
okay.
have something for the community,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
Yeah. Now Lizzie was somehow related to Robert Borden, who was our prime minister, and believe me, I tried to work that angle, but and
So
Lizzie does have a family up here.
So I got
Distant.
a grant to help write me publish my book, right?
Mhm.
But how
Yeah.
I had to do it because there's nothing Staten Island Lizzie, right?
Mhm.
So when I included the other murderous women, there is one notorious poison or murderer on Staten Island, Polly Boudin. So I
Mm.
included her in my book as a Staten Island murderess, and
Yeah.
then the project was accepted.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
because I involve some kind of peace in the community.
Well,
It,
wait a
it,
minute. There is a connection. Dr. Chagnon's wife was from Canada.
yes.
Oh, I forgot the name. She either jumped out a window or fell out a
Oh
window
God.
and met a terrible end that way. But we had such a large French Canadian
Mhm.
population in Fall River. Uh, I could give you a list of a lot of characters in, the Borden story with Canadian, yeah,
Joseph
background.
Shortsleeves as well, I believe, wasn't he?
Yeah,
He was
Court
court marsh.
Manche.
Oh,
Yeah.
there
Court
you go.
Manche.
So you have some
Yes.
peeps.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I found his grave. Yeah. Mhm.
it's a realm I'm definitely looking into. To be honest, this was something to be 100% candid. This was something to kill some time. I was, I was nursing an injury. I had a brand new baby, and I was on parental, and there was a pandemic all at the same time.
Wow.
I wasn't going anywhere.
Yeah.
And it
Yeah.
took a life of its own. And I mean, there's been some subscribers and some donations and stuff on our YouTube is not yet monetized, but we're on our way up. And on top of that, it's just there've been some donations and a small advertisement run at one point. But
Have
we
you
are
thought of Patreon?
yes, yeah, yeah.
That's a good move. Yeah.
Patreon is one area I really, we were talking about it just the other day, me and my my Saturday Night Live co-host, and we really want to have some awesome content on Patreon. So we're gonna have to front end load some stuff, I think. Also, on top of that, I'm a big person on making sure everything's, art can be free. I'd hate for someone to miss out on something because they didn't have, $2 or $3 a month, and I know that sounds facetious, but it's genuinely.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's a
Yeah.
lot of things, and we actually just in December, after being together as an organization for almost 10 years, we Lions Den itself, the actual theater company, we've started working as we put together our nonprofit stuff. So that'll open some huge doors for us as well, because we've just been
Awesome.
kind of an unofficial group.
Yeah. That's great. That's great though that you're doing that. It seems like it will help out a lot. Like once
Yeah,
you get
yeah,
it
and it's
all
well
together. And,
overdue.
yeah.
It's well overdue. I went, my wife and I had, we got the ball rolling and on the theater group, and then one of our partners moved off, and a few people left, and my wife and I had 4 children, and
Wow.
yeah,
Wow. That's a
Oh,
lot. That's a
4.
lot.
And
And
you
it's
still
hard when
have
people move.
time.
Like
Oh,
during COVID, I lost my whole film crew
yeah,
for one of the shows I did. So not by COVID, but because they didn't get
mhm,
vaccinated, they weren't allowed in the studio.
yeah, yeah,
yeah.
So things like that. But
mhm,
you know what? I don't know, Shelley, if we're going to get to the Jennings journals. We have we can maybe do like one or two things from that. Um, because this could be a podcast in itself. This book, it's just
It's packed full of
it
good stuff.
is it
It's
is
taken me a while to read it
yeah,
because I have to make notes in the margin and underline.
yeah,
There's just so much detail. The first thing that knocked me, for a loop was the chloroform story. I'll just throw
yeah.
that
That
out
was
there.
really like it
Yeah,
it it shot out at me too. Like wow.
yeah, yeah, I
So
know. Hmm. So
yeah,
many
I mean, there's
things.
speculation that what Lizzie had chloroform that she
Well, yeah.
purchased or
Well,
or
Emma
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 purchased.
had requested that she go down to Riddles, which I think was on North Main Street.
Yeah, it's like a
I think.
drugstore, right?
Yeah, yeah, it might have even been in the Granite Block. I've got to check that. It takes a long time to get through this. Thank goodness we have an excellent index that was done by Dr. Corey, who did Parallel Lives
Yeah,
Index.
kudos to the
Really
people
good
that did this
index,
book, really.
and you can
Yeah.
find things easily there. But
So,
it is a feast of detail. If you're a detail freak like me, you're going to find this very, very useful in
well,
clarifying things and
like
little tidbits.
the chloroform, the whole point with that it may have been used, right? But I don't think so. But just the mere mention of it, if you would use chloroform to knock somebody out before you kill them, their heart would stop and there would be less blood spatter.
mhm.
That's the whole point of that. And I think Andrew didn't have a lot of blood spatter, right? Around the
Well, there was
body.
43 drops on the picture above his
Right.
head,
So, but
and
it wasn't
another
like
on the
gorging
door,
out
not
like
spurting. No, once the
right, not
heart stops,
spurting,
there's no
but
spurt.
little
Spray, a lot of
sprinkles.
spray. Yeah,
Right, right.
spray for
So
sure.
the chloroform stuck out to you. One thing that
Mm.
really stuck out to me, and it was a mystery for a long time, but I think it got clarified in this book, was Andrew's coat that was missing, the one they
Yes.
buried. We found out that Dolan actually took a sample, like cut out a piece of his coat took a sample, I guess, for blood or whatever. So
And the
it's like a
shirt as well.
mystery solved because we thought that, his clothing went missing for the longest time. I'm like, well, what happened to it? But it was there, and they did take samples of it,
I
and that
thought
that
they
came
had
from
cleaned it and
Jennings.
buried him in it, actually.
Mm.
Well, that was a thought
Yeah,
too, right? Because
yeah.
it wasn't on the list that they
That's
made
right.
for the clothes
That's
that they
right.
buried in the yard. It was
Yeah.
never on the list. So we're
Mm.
like crazy Lizzie fans going, well, what happened to his coat?
Where's the coat? Where's the
Like,
coat?
this is the cloak that Lizzie wore to cover up,
Mm.
her
Mhm.
body when she did the murder, and it was rolled
Maybe.
under his
Yeah.
head
Yeah.
to prop him up, and all of a sudden it disappeared. Like,
Mm.
but mystery solved.
So
It's
this
no
book
longer,
is chock full
yeah.
of stuff like that. Little things you've always wondered about, and you find out some of these. No smoking gun. There's
No.
not going to be any big reveal, but it does flesh out some other little things that we've been curious about.
Yeah, and
So,
even like words, just simple words that are mentioned in the book, and all of a sudden, it just like, like it shoots through your head like a comment that a statement that Mr. Harrington made about his sister, Andrew's sister. You know,
Lorana, yeah.
yeah, and he was describing that relationship, and he said she was a subservient to Andrew, like in anything basically that he wanted as well. And if you look at that, the girls that lived, Emma and Lizzie, were also subservient. Like that whole household was strictly under his rules, even his own sister. It's like
Oh,
things
yeah,
like
but
that
that
stuck
was
out. Like, wow, like,
that's the family dynamic of the era. The men are the kingpin, and
right,
the women defer to the men.
right. But that word
You had
just
a few
drives me nuts.
rebel,
Like,
but
it's like
yeah,
I
but
could
that
not
was
be
the
a woman
pattern.
living back
Mm.
then. No, no.
No,
I
you
would probably
couldn't.
kill somebody too.
Yeah, I sure wouldn't be married 50 years. I'm
No,
coming up on my
no.
50th anniversary, and no, I don't think I would have lasted that long back then, as much as I love the Victorian era. So,
Yeah, and that's a good point that Joanne's saying if we could only get into Robinson's safe.
mm,
I don't know why that's so protected because, I mean, it's been over 100 years. Come on. It's
I
so
I
ridiculous,
gotta
right?
think that there's something in there that might cause controversy.
Mm.
Or it would
Or
just take away the mystery and no one would visit anymore and be tourists, right?
well, hey,
Yep.
maybe the Chamber of Commerce is in on this somehow. Yeah,
Right, exactly. It's what I'm thinking. It's a money thing.
you never know.
Um,
Well, maybe Keith, when you come with your 4 children for the tour, I'll take you to Springfield, and we'll go in our ninja suits and midnight movers, and we'll bust open the safe at Robinson's new law firm there.
It's a
And
deal. It's a deal
okay, are you on? You up for that?
for
Okay,
sure.
yeah.
My kids
so,
would be for sure.
Oh,
like,
good times.
so before we sign off, I just want to mention a few of our guests and patrons that do come to the podcast every time we have it, and I want to thank them for being supporters of this podcast.
I guess we could
Um,
call them the Second Street regulars
yeah,
that always turn in. Yeah,
definitely are this. That's a good one, Shelley. I like that one. So I
yeah.
want to thank, and I have a little list here: Kelly Hall, Joanne
Mhm.
Walker, Judy Baker, Rusty Judd, and thank you for the Lizzie Borden shop too, Rusty. You're one of my biggest fans there. David Wolf, Michael Teleglu, Pamela Howe. Thank you for showing up all the time, David Wolf. I know I missed some people. Oh, I already said David, right? But we appreciate you tuning in and all the time. And if you have anything that you would like us to talk about in the future on this podcast, please feel free. And we want to thank our special guest, Keith. Thank you for coming and sharing your theater group with us and all your thoughts about the case.
And so much. And I think Keith and I are going to have to start a Friends of Abby Borden group.
I think so. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
That
No,
would be
thanks.
good.
Okay.
Thanks so much. I'm usually one of the ones in the commenters, and I absolutely, I certainly the subject matter is great. There's a lot of, like I say, there's a lot of rabbit holes you can go down, and there's good rabbit holes and there's bad rabbit holes, and you guys always provide the good rabbit holes. Some of the best are on warps and wefts, and
Yes,
Oh,
I
thank
love
you.
that. I
appreciate
personally
that.
love the website too. It's beautiful.
We sure do
Yeah.
our best to find good information for people. And that's what it's about. You put good stuff out there and you make up your own mind. And
And two more things in closing. I put all the names in that were on like our comments in a little.
mhm.
We always do this at the end of the show. We pull a name from the bucket. And Shelley, you have the little giveaway this time, right?
Well, yeah, it's one I've done before. In fact, Rusty won the last time.
Oh.
It's a spinster tea.
Okay, so I'm pulling a name, and it is
Oh,
Michelle Bird.
Michelle Bird.
Michelle Bird, yes.
Okay. Well, if we can get her
I will
address,
get her information.
I'll get her can of spinster tea. It's just something for fun. It's actually a Harney and Sons tea. My daughter designed a funny little Lizzie label, and it has a little hatchet on it. So
Nice, nice.
uh,
And
I have a
and the next
David's back. He wants to know where to get the Lizzie stand-up figures. Lizzie's always behind me in our podcast,
oh, yeah.
and it's just a website called Standees, Dees, and you just upload a photo of Lizzie. They're in the price range depending on how large, life size. She is life size. I wanted to see what 5'3" look like. And they run anywhere between $90 and $120 if you're interested in those. They're fun to have. Lizzie's been everywhere. She's been
Yeah.
in New Bedford to the courthouse to restaurants on Main Street, and she opens a lot of doors. When you show up anywhere with Lizzie, and we dress her up sometimes, Flat Lizzie, we call her, people are very happy to open the door and talk to you. So that's one of my little tips
Yeah.
if you're a researcher. Get yourself a Flat Lizzie.
And lastly, I want to thank Hub 17 in Staten Island here. This is where we do the podcast out of. They've been supporters of these podcasts, and I'm so thankful that I'm able to come here and do them. So thank you.
Yeah.
And that's about it. It's a wrap, and hopefully, we'll see you guys the next time.
And we could go on for hours, Kimber. We could.
I know. My ear was hurting yesterday.
But
But
we'll see everybody in April, I guess.
yes, we do
In
this every
April.
other month. So, and thank you, Keith, for coming. And
thanks again.
yeah,
Such a
thanks
pleasure to
everybody.
see you. Yes.
Yeah,
And
yeah. We've all been talking online for so long. It's nice to.
Yeah. Face to face. And when can we look forward to the next episode on, I guess it would be day 5?
It'll be the end of day 4. It'll be this week sometime. Yep.
This week. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
I've subscribed and rang the bell, so I'll be notified.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
okay, good night, everyone, and we will see you soon. All
Good
right,
night.
good night.